स्वतंत्रता का अमृत महोत्सव के अवसर पर इस कार्यक्रम में जुड़े हुए आप सभी को मेरा नमस्कार, प्रणाम। विज्ञान भारती का सभी सदस्यों को मेरा शुभकामनाएं। This is the 75th year of Indian independence being celebrated by Vigyan Bharati under the banner Swatantrata Ka Amrut Mahotsav. Naturally, the program has two different objectives. In one hand, the Vigyan Bharati has to look at the freedom movement of India, and on the other hand, the Vigyan Bharati has to look at the science and scientists in the colonial India, and then it's the job of the Vigyan Bharati to link both, highlighting the contribution of Indian scientists in Indian freedom movement during colonial India. There are some renowned and well-known scientists who contributed a lot during the freedom movement of the country. Even then, this is a very good subject matter of research and contribution of regional scientists from different regions may be carried out in the form of research in future, and Vigyan Bharati Northeast Branch may look forward to find out the contribution of the scientists from the Northeast India in the freedom movement. Keeping that particular aspects in mind, the talk which I am going to deliver is titled as Science Beyond Scientists in the Colonial India. The basic objective of this particular program is that we need to move from science to freedom movement. But in my talk, I would like to have a reverse journey, freedom movement to science. Normally, we have to link the activities of the scientists of India in freedom movement. But as a little reverse journey, I would like to link the activity of a particular freedom activist in the field of science. Now, who should be designated as scientist? Obviously, who should be defined as a scientist? Obviously, the very easy definition is the people who are working in the laboratory, who are doing the experiments, coming up with certain results, theories, and products. They are the scientists. But the definition of scientist may go a little beyond. And that is my focus of this particular lecture. The definition of science or the scientist may go a little beyond to the level from where all the principles of science originate. I'm repeating, to go to the level from where all the principles of science originate. What I intend to mean is the philosophy of science. And the person whom I like to discuss in this platform today, in this program, is none other than Sri Aurobindo, whose 150th birth anniversary is today. It's India's 75th independence and Sri Aurobindo's 150th birth anniversary. I'm sure my audience will be a little puzzled how Aurobindo, who is well known as a freedom activist, as a armed revolutionary leader, top armed revolutionary leader of India, who ultimately turned to a philosopher, can be brought in this platform while we are to discuss the freedom activities, the freedom movement, and the scientific activities. Yes, Sri Aurobindo is relevant here. During my 22 years intensive study about Sri Aurobindo and his philosopher, I have discovered him as a spiritual scientist who says that science can achieve perfection only at the level of spirituality. And spirituality he defined as a state of pure consciousness, a state of higher consciousness. His opinion is that until and unless the scientists are having a higher mental state, a state of pure consciousness, scientific discoveries cannot reach absolute truth. This is the concept of Sri Aurobindo so far as the science is concerned, scientific limitation is concerned, and by doing so, Sri Aurobindo, being a freedom activist of India, being a philosopher, has contributed a lot in the field of science in the colonial period, who has given a new shape, who has proposed a new shape for the whole science, not only for the India, but also for the whole world. A freedom fighter, a revolutionary leader, a philosopher contributed a lot by proposing a holistic approach for science for the whole world. Now, Sri Aurobindo's contribution in the freedom movement is well known. There is no need of discussing. Everyone knows Sri Aurobindo was one of the India's topmost armed revolutionary leader. His active participation was from 1906 to 1910 in Kolkata, where he initiated all those revolutionary activity being centered in Muraripukur, which is his paternal uh, house. He was connected to, before that, he was connected to K.G. Deshpande, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Sister Nivedita, and with their inspiration and involvement, he wanted to spread the nationalism, the armed revolutionary nationalism throughout the country. And we know Khudiram Basu was the direct recruitment of Sri Aurobindo, who sacrificed his life in Alipur bomb case, that is the Muzaffarpur bomb case, which is popularly known as Alipur bomb case. And because of that, Sri Aurobindo was arrested and he was in jail for 1 year, and ultimately he was able to escape. But instead of this direct armed revolutionary, in spite of or in addition to this armed revolutionary activities, Sri Aurobindo, through his writing in the uh, Bande Mataram newspaper, motivated Indian like anything for active involvement in the revolutionary movement for freedom of India. These things are well known. I'm not going to discuss further on those. The general people know all those. But what is not known to the common people is Sri Aurobindo's contribution in the field of science. That is what I'm going to discuss today. I'm sure after my talk is over, the audience will realize how a freedom leader, a freedom fighter, freedom activist, revolutionary leader, being a philosopher, contributed a lot in the field of science for shaping, for giving a new shape of science for the whole world. Sri Aurobindo views or Sri Aurobindo's views on science has been well documented in a publication of Mother Service Society. They have well documented what Sri Aurobindo proposed so far as particular science is, so far as the science and scientific discoveries are concerned, so far as the scopes and limitation of science are concerned. Sri Aurobindo argued that the main basis of science is the rational thinking. Science is mostly dependent on rational thinking. But he said rationality is a power of mind and therefore of ignorance. He views that the higher than mental state is indirectly help the emergence of pure rational mind. Naturally, we may therefore realize that unless and until scientists are achieving a higher mental state, pure rational mind shall remain absent in all scientific works. According to Sri Aurobindo, recognizing this inherent limitation of rational thoughts as an instrument of knowledge should be the objective of science. I'm repeating, recognizing inherent limitation of rational thoughts, which is the basis of science, has a limitation because it's the product of mind. And when the mind is not perfect, rational thought cannot be perfect. Sri Aurobindo desired that science should discover and test the power of mental silence in order to reveal the highest knowledge that can help in developing intuitive faculty on a much wider basis. Sri Aurobindo here basically proposed a paradigm shift from rational thinking to intuitive thinking so far as the scientific discoveries are concerned. Because he said, only at a state of intuitive faculty of mind, the scientific achievement can be perfect. Otherwise, imperfect mind will result imperfect rationality, and then the hide and seek game in science will continue. Science objective of achieving the absolute truth by science shall remain a far-reaching goal. This is the opinion given by Sri Aurobindo. I understand. Realizing those facts will be little difficult for the common audience. Keeping that in mind, let me explain in my words. When biologist Gregor Johann Mendel proposed his theory of heredity with all mathematical expression, he was rejected like anything. And then Mendel died. His theory was not accepted. He was died. After a long gap of 20 years or so, when his one of his students, rediscovered the same theory, then the scientific community accepted it. And till now, this is accepted theory so far as the mathematical expression of heredity is concerned, although there are some changes and variations. That's fine. But at that point of time, when Mendel proposed it, he was absolutely rejected. So what was thought to be rational when the Mendel proposed his theory was proved to be irrational after a period of 20 years. So in science, we are moving between rationality and irrationality. This is not the objective of science. Objective of science is to achieve the absolute truth. Till now, Sri Aurobindo says, science is unable to reach the absolute truth, and the hide and seek between rationality and irrationality is going on because science is based on rational thinking, and rationality is the product of mind. When the mind is imperfect, rationality cannot be pure, and science cannot achieve perfection. And so, as a solution he has given, the scientists should try to go beyond the normal mental level, higher mental level, and at a level of intuitive faculty, the science can achieve perfection. Let me share another interesting story here I experienced. I was attending a DBT meeting at Tata Memorial Center in Mumbai. It's a well-known center, cancer hospital. We had a program. After the meeting was over, one cancer oncologist, very senior person, delivered a lecture, and that lecture attracted me like anything. This very senior cancer oncosurgeon was with his showing his experiments and everything. He was telling that probably what the scientists have been doing since last 60 years, so far as the cancer research is concerned, is probably all are wrong. And with experiment, he shows that what should be considered for the next course of action so far as the cancer research and treatment is concerned. He was focusing, he was targeting a completely different approach for cancer research and cancer treatment. His lecture was so impressive, but at the end of the lecture, he said, I'm quoting him, unfortunately, no scientific journal is ready to publish my work. This is his quote and unquote. Unfortunately, no scientific journal is ready to publish my work. Probably they will need another 20 years period of time to understand what I am saying now. So if the science objective of science is to achieve absolute truth, absolute perfection, this should not be there. This type of flexibility should not be there, because truth, particularly the absolute truth, can never be flexible. So if the concept the old cancer surgeon proposed proved to be true after 20 years period of time, what we are thinking about cancer research and treatment now will be proved irrational. But at this moment, we are thinking what we are doing is very rational. We are doing science, and so science is based on rationality, so everything is perfect. But if that theory of that old cancer surgeon is proved after 20 years, obviously our today's rational thoughts will be considered as irrational in that point of time. Sri Aurobindo was focusing on that this is happening because this rationality, what we are considering as the basis of science, is the product of imperfect mind. So the rationality is not pure. We do not have pure rational thought. Until and unless we do not have pure rational thought, we cannot reach the truth. That's the problem the whole science has been facing, Sri Aurobindo argued. The problem lies here is that I'm going back to that particular cancer oncosurgeon. Why his concept was not accepted? The problem lies here is that the present day science does not publish any scientific paper without peer review. And the meaning of peer review is that some other people, at least some other people, should be in agreement with the findings of what is going to be published. Now, if this has to happen always, there cannot be major breakthrough. There cannot be any de novo invention, because for any de novo invention, for any major breakthrough, other people cannot agree, because this is something new, not known to anyone. By doing so, what we are doing, we are blocking the pure rational thoughts in scientists. That's the limitation. It seems because our imperfect mental state, because of our imperfect mental state, our rationality moves in a trial and error fashion. Almost every scientific breakthrough had to face rational rejection rather than irrational rejection rather than rational consideration by the scientific community. Every major breakthrough in the history of science had to face irrational rejection, like Mendel was rejected. So this is almost common everywhere so far as the major breakthrough or de novo scientific invention is concerned. Here lies the limitation of science, Sri Aurobindo highlighted. That's why he was focusing on that the mental status of scientists should go beyond rational thinking, and gradually it should reach a state of intuitive faculty so that the pure thoughts can come out, and whatever experiments will be designed with the pure thoughts, whatever results will be obtained with the pure thoughts, that will be the absolute truth. There will not be any deviation, there will not be any flexibility. While viewing limitation of empiricism of science, Sri Aurobindo views that empiricism can hardly discover essential reality. Explaining extrinsic know-how is possible with empiricism, but determining intrinsic cause and process can never be possible with method of knowledge, Sri Aurobindo says. According to him, integration of empiricism with metaphysics, that is pure rational thoughts, by formulation of sound metaphysical foundation of rational thought as the basis of empiricism, can be the means to understand the intrinsic reality by science, Sri Aurobindo visualizes. Let me explain this particular thing, the extrinsic and intrinsic. Now, science is based on empiricism, Sri Aurobindo says. And according to him, the empiricism can touch the outer surface of the problem. It cannot reach the inner surface or the inner core content of the problem. And here lies the problem so far as the scientific discoveries are concerned. His suggestion is that the empiricism should be combined with pure metaphysical thoughts to understand the intrinsic reality of each and every problem, so that science can come up with a solution to that particular problem. Let me explain what is happening here because of that extrinsic and intrinsic problem, non-understanding of intrinsic problem. Alexander Fleming discovered antibiotic in 1928. And after that, in 1942, the antibiotic to treat tuberculosis, I'm just taking one example, antibiotic to treat tuberculosis was discovered in 1942, the streptomycin. The first streptomycin was used for treatment of tuberculosis in 1944. But within a period of 4 to 6 years, the bacteria developed resistance. And that challenge the whole scientific community has been facing till now. Scientists are discovering newer and newer antibiotics, but the bacteria are developing newer and newer resistance mechanism, as a result of which the tuberculosis is still a challenge for the developing countries in the whole world. Even in the developed countries, the tuberculosis is a challenge. Some of the developed countries, tuberculosis is a challenge. Probably the reason of that, the game between the science and the tiny, I'm citing example from only one infectious disease, tuberculosis. The same is true for almost all other infectious diseases. That game is still continuing between a tiny organism, bacteria, and the whole scientific world. Probably this is because, as a scientist, we are not trying to understand, or we are unable to understand the intrinsic reality of the problem. Sri Aurobindo highlighted that understanding intrinsic reality needs a combination of empiricism and pure rational thoughts. Since the science has failed to combine both together till now, this is happening. The problem is still going on. We're trying to solve it from extensive point of view. Again, other problems are coming, and the fight is on a regular basis. Sri Aurobindo says, there is one important suggestion from Aurobindo, that lack of integration of empiricism and metaphysics probably has kept scientists away from understanding the intrinsic reality of the whole subject matter is question. Here, as a subject matter, I wanted to put the antibiotic discovery and antibiotic resistance. It's a problem. So Aurobindo is saying that probably lack of understanding the intrinsic reality is probably responsible for the situation. He says, principles and processes of life and life responses need to be scientifically studied with reference to the corresponding inner condition of consciousness that relate to and govern the external events. There are some external events. Looking at the external events, so far as the life and life processes are concerned, I have highlighted the bacteria. This is because this is a life, we are fighting with the life and life processes. So while we'll be fighting with the life and life processes, we need to understand that what we are observing uh, as external thing is not the actual thing. It should be studied with reference to the corresponding inner condition of consciousness that relate and govern to external events. So the external events are governed by some internal factors. So we need to focus while solving the problem. If we design a solution looking at the external events, the problem will not be solved. Finally, so his suggestion is that we need to look at the internal condition that is governing the external events. That was his suggestion. Sri Aurobindo says, science understands only laws of matter. That is the problem for the science. Science understands only the laws of matter, but not the laws of life, laws of mind, and laws of supermind. Science till now does not understand. Science is mainly concerned with expression of material processes. It cannot recognize the existence of any of those higher planes other than the material forms. He says, when life events respond to our action, attitude, feeling, and thoughts, definitely life obeys the laws that can be physically observed and scientifically studied. There is no question. It's not that the life and life processes cannot be physically observed and scientifically studied. This is possible, no issue. But till now, science is not looking at those. Understanding the law of life, mind, and supermind would have immense practical implication for humanity's understanding of life, society, collective development, and individual accomplishment, Sri Aurobindo says. Need of applying standards for empirical research was applicable to each field of study was emphasized by Sri Aurobindo. Need for standard of empirical research applicable to each field of study should be there. If the principles of physical measurement and experimentation is applied in studying life, mind, and consciousness, this will mean use of telescope to hear and microscope to smell. Complete mismatch. It should not be like this. Sri Aurobindo is telling that, yes, there should be standard empirical research application applicable to each field of study. Life, mind, and consciousness can be a subject matter of rigorous scientific experimentation. No issue. But only in their own terms, not in terms of matter. But in science, what we try to do, we try to explain life in terms of matter. We try to explain life process in terms of matter. Probably this is the mistake the science has been doing. Sri Aurobindo says, life, mind, and consciousness can be a subject matter of rigorous scientific experimentation, no issue, but only in their own terms, on own plane of existence, by applying their own laws. When we'll go to do experiment with life, we need to apply the laws of life. We need not apply the laws of matter there. Here lies the problem, Sri Aurobindo highlighted. As a result, Sri Aurobindo asked for a thorough re-examination of the underlying principle on which science is based. According to him, the science arose as a reaction to superstition and dogma of religion during Middle Ages. The origin of science, mostly as a reaction to the superstition of and dogma of religion during Middle Age, science arose. Naturally, it was dependent on a physical means for validation of knowledge through scientific methods. That there was no alternative at that point of time. But the mistake what we are doing is that while doing so, we are thinking, the scientists, as a scientist, we are thinking we're going to establish that all material phenomena, vital and mental phenomena, are the product of physical process. No, it's not. It's not true. It's a completely wrong idea. Yes, at that point of time when science was originated, there was no other alternative but to base on a physical uh, method or experimental proof. But the assumption that all material phenomena and vital and mental phenomena are the product of physical processes, that assumption is completely wrong. Again, science is doing mistake here. Science is considering or proclaiming that matter is the sole reality, like matter is the Brahman. It's not. Sri Aurobindo criticized that concept by saying that monoism of matter means matter is the ultimate reality. It's not. Matter is not the ultimate reality. He said, a re-examination of underlying principle is essential for science and its future evolution as a body of knowledge. We need to re-examine that particular principle for the future growth and evolution of science. All vital and mental phenomena are not the product of physical process. Now, according to Sri Aurobindo, matter is the link, final link in the chain of energy, like from conscious being, the sequence is like this, the conscious being to supermind, to mind, to life, to matter. So matter is not the ultimate reality. He says, science views all energy as material energy and does not recognize the existence of life or mental or spiritual energy. That's the problem of science. Beyond matter, present day science does not understand anything. This is the concept given by Sri Aurobindo. This is the concept regarding reshaping the whole science given by Sri Aurobindo. The time I have exhausted. I have taken little extra time. I had intention of discussing a little more, explaining some of those processes, but because of the time constraint, I need to stop here. I shall be happy if the audience here contact me in future, even through my email and my WhatsApp, or even they can phone me at any point of time, and we may discuss. Again, the matter is really very, very confusing and very, very critical to me even. I'm trying to understand what Sri Aurobindo has said, because this is a very holistic concept given to the whole world of science by Sri Aurobindo, whom we normally now know as a great philosopher of the country. And before becoming a great philosopher, he was the great revolutionary leader of India who contributed a lot for India's freedom movement. आप सभी को मेरा नमस्कार।